found dry land in my Father's hands. I will rest on the shores that He keeps.
Hello, good morning. This week we're going to be thinking in our devotions about Moses, the Old Testament character, Moses running away, or perhaps not running away. But before I give the reading from today, I'd like to put the Moses story into context. A few generations earlier, Joseph, one of Abraham's descendants, had been forced to move from his family home in Canaan on the eastern Mediterranean coast to Egypt, about 300 miles away, where he rose to become second in command under the then Pharaoh. Because of a dreadful famine that took place in that land while he was there, Pharaoh agreed to Joseph's request for his extended family to move to Goshen in Egypt and have access to food. The Egyptians, or the Hebrews as they're sometimes known, moved, they settled, and their numbers grew. Then, over time, a new Pharaoh became very worried by their sheer numbers and used them as forced labourers and treated them increasingly harshly. It's probably not possible to prevent people from having sex, but at the end of the day, pregnancy ends in birth. And at this point, it may be easier to exercise some population control. And this is where our story begins. And I'm going to read from Exodus in the Old Testament, chapter 1, verses 15 to 22. And this is the dangerous atmosphere into which Moses is born. The king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, whose names were Shiphrah and Puah, "When you help the Hebrew women in childbirth and observe them on the delivery stool, if it is a boy, kill him, but if it is a girl, let her live." The midwives, however, feared God and did not do what the king of Egypt had told them to do. They let the boys live. Then the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and asked them, "Why have you done this? Why have you let the boys live?" The midwives answered Pharaoh, "Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. They are vigorous and give birth before the midwives arrive." So God was kind to the midwives, and the people increased and became even more numerous. And because the midwives feared God, He gave them families of their own. Then Pharaoh gave this order to all his people: "Every boy that is born you must throw into the Nile, but let every girl live." So it's into this dangerous atmosphere that Moses is born. And we'll continue by reading from Exodus chapter 2, verses 1 to 10. Now a man in the house of Levi married a Levite woman, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him and coated it with tar and pitch. Then she placed the child in it and put it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile. His sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. Then Pharaoh's daughter went down to the Nile to bathe, and her attendants were walking along the riverbank. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her slave girl to get it. She opened it and saw the baby. He was crying, and she felt sorry for him. "This is one of the Hebrew babies," she said. Then his sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" "Yes, go," she answered. And the girl went and got the baby's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this baby and nurse him for me, and I will pay you." So the woman took the baby and nursed him. When the child grew older, she took him to Pharaoh's court. and he became her son. She named him Moses, saying, I drew him out of the water. And so, without the deception by the midwives, the floating cradle made by the mother, the brave and practical action by the sister, Moses the baby would not have survived. As a baby, he was not able to run away from the danger of the despotic Pharaoh. What does this mean for us? This baby couldn't run to safety himself. He needed the protection of others. The midwives knew the law of the land, but they chose to disobey. The mother knew the law of the land and the danger it put her new baby in, and she thought of a way to hide him. The sister had her wits about her and made a good suggestion. Might we sometimes need to stand up to a person, a rule, a convention, in order to protect someone who is weak or vulnerable from danger or exploitation? Perhaps we need to turn to Proverbs 15 verse 9 for some guidance here. The Lord detests the way of the wicked, but he loves those who pursue righteousness. None of the people who helped Moses when he was not able to run away himself can have had any idea about how he would later be used in God's plan. Neither do we know for sure how decisions and actions we take in day-to-day life may influence any future event. That we must leave in God's hands. So in conclusion, and something to think about today, Moses the baby was not able to run away from the dangerous Pharaoh, but several God-fearing people protected him. Do we protect the vulnerable? I'll leave you with that thought.
Oh, be still, my soul, though the sorrows toll and the thunders roar all around me. I have found dry land in my Father's hand. I will rest on the shores that he keeps. High above it all, over anxious thoughts, there's an ancient song that attends me. From the lullaby to the martyr's cry, it is well, I will sing. I have found dry land in my Father's hands. I will rest on the shores that he keeps.